Hey, folks, happy Friday, and welcome to another episode of Plan a Conversation. So, listen, we are finally in season nine of Plan A Conversations, and I could not think of anyone better to have this conversation with than a gentleman that is on your screen right now. But before I get into that introduction, let me go ahead and tell you I'm so grateful for all of your DMs and your emails about our Wake Up with Clay moments that we have sporadically throughout the week. Anything that's on my heart that can support you in your purpose, in your life, in your relationships, in your career, it has been a privilege to do that. And so shout out to our folks over in Germany and Japan who has been coming back every week, and for your notes as well. We'll continue to keep this going for as long as I feel led to do it and as long as you want to hear what we have going on. So listen, the gentleman that you are seeing on your screen, and for our folks who are audio listeners, you'll be able to hear his voice momentarily. I have so much respect for and just so much love for this guy and what he's doing and what he's creating. Let me set the scene for you all. I was at a wedding, actually officiating a wedding several years ago. And talk about synchronicity and being at the right place at the right time. The bride I was friends with before I met the groom. And we actually used to work together at Polo Ralph Lauren well over a decade ago. And so when I was introduced to her and I was told a little bit about my background, she goes, "Oh, you have a theology background. Are you a licensed minister? Can you do weddings?" I go, "Yeah, I can do weddings." She said, "You're going to officiate my wedding." And 12 years later, that happened. And who did I meet at the wedding? Cam Snaith. What's up, Cam?
What's up, Clay? Thanks for the generous introduction, and thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. And so we connected at our mutual friend's wedding, and I was doing some outreach and research, and Dan said you really need to talk to Cam on what he's doing. And so, Cam, our audience, I've been prepping them for the last couple of weeks. They know that you are
Okay.
the founder of Bleeker, but let's get into some nuts and bolts about it. What is Bleeker, and what was the impetus for why you founded this company or co-founded this company?
Sure. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Bleeker. Our mission is to put underrepresented talent in the driver's seat of their career,
Hmm.
right? So what that means for us, Clay, is that professionals, especially professionals from traditionally marginalized groups, are getting
Hmm.
where they want to go in their career, how they want to get there, right? And so those two
Yeah.
things together, right? Getting where you want to go and how you want to get there. That's difficult for anybody. That's especially difficult for people from traditionally marginalized groups. And at one point, I was one of those people. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm now getting where I want to go, how I want to get there. But there was a point in my career where I wasn't, right? I was doing everything I thought I should be doing. I went to good schools. I was working really hard. I was trying to get better all the time. And I felt like I was standing still sometimes when I was looking around at some of my peers who were advancing more quickly than I was, and frankly, who
Hmm.
seemed more satisfied or more fulfilled by what they were doing than I was. That was the impetus to start Bleeker. Like, what is it that I'm doing wrong? Right? What is it
Hmm.
that I don't have?
Right.
And how could I really feel fulfilled? Like, what I wanted, and what I still want, is to have what I like to think of as a meaningful life's work. Right?
Right.
Like, I want to look back at what I've accomplished when I finish my career and feel really good about what I've created, right? An extraordinary life's work, right?
Right.
And I'm on my path now with Bleeker, but that's what we intend to do for the community we support and through the partners we work with. I can get more into the details and the specifics of Bleeker if you like, but that's kind of the how and why of Bleeker.
Yeah. And so for you, Cam, where were you in your career? Let's walk our listeners through like
Sure.
where you were to let them know like something doesn't seem right here. I want to
Yeah.
take a little bit more ownership.
Yeah. So I'll go back to the start. So
Yeah.
uh, my very first job out of college was at a music nonprofit organization founded by the violinist Midori Goto. Because
Mm.
all I knew when I graduated from college is, oh, I want to work in the music industry. Right?
Yeah.
And still a person who had impact in his heart, working at a music nonprofit seemed to be the right thing for me. About a year after working at that nonprofit, I started my own nonprofit where I actually started it with my Bleeker co-founder, Jay. And what we were doing with a bunch of other incredible volunteers, including Dan Salmon, who you know, was we were raising money to send kids to arts and music summer camp. right? That was my first business. We
Okay.
were doing that all nights and weekends. While I was doing that, I was working at a talent agency. I worked at a talent agency called ICM, and then I went to work for a marketing agency. And while I was working at these different companies, I always had my side hustle, right? So this nonprofit organization was my night and weekend side hustle. As I started to advance in my career, I gave up the reins of this nonprofit to one of the other leaders, and I went to grad school. I did that on nights and weekends. Um, Eventually, I started working at the NBA in a marketing position. By the time that I finished my master's at Columbia, I really didn't have anything else to focus on but my job. And that's when I started
Mm.
working at PepsiCo, a tremendous company. A lot of tremendous people work there. It was the first time in my career where all I had to focus on was my job, right? Like I still had
Mm.
family, I still had friends,
Yeah.
but from a professional perspective, that was the first time in my career. This is what, like 10, 11 years in my career, where all I could think about was, oh, like how am I going to build a career at this company, right? Through this company or in this profession of marketing. And that's when I really started to look around and say, like, oh, like I don't actually enjoy this, right? Like I made a lot of good friends there. I made some mentors there. I really love the process of learning, right?
Yeah.
So like being there and learning new rules is really interesting to me. But the day in, day out work of being in that particular company, nothing to do with the company, it just has to do with the misalignment, right?
Did
I
something
was misaligned.
happen at that to make that trigger that for you?
No, I mean, it was great work to have. It was nice to tell my mom and dad that I was working at PepsiCo in global
Mm.
headquarters. I feel like I was well respected there. I was on a nice management path there, but I really just started to better understand what I needed out of work. It wasn't about
Got
my
it.
environment; it was more about me.
Yeah.
I never paid attention to that. I started to really think, well, what is it that I want out of my career? What kind of impact
Mm.
do I want to have? And once I started to interrogate that, I started to question, well, why am I here? Like,
Mm.
like, is this the place where I'll have the type of impact that I want? And then when it became clear to me that the answer was no, the first thing I thought was, well, like, how did I get here, right?
Right.
And are there people who, like me, are similarly dislocated from what they want to do and what they're doing now?
Hmm.
And if so, what can I do about it?
Right. So there was a purpose alignment question that sort of came for you. When
Yeah,
at some point did you recognize that there are other people who may look like you or
yeah.
other people of color that could are having this same experience?
Well, it started out by having conversations with some of those folks inside of PepsiCo.
Mm.
Uh, and then it started by having conversations with folks outside of PepsiCo. Me and who eventually became my Bleeker co-founder, Jason. We just started to meet people again. This became the third side hustle, right? So we started to meet with people on nights and weekends, and just to talk to them about their careers. It's really
Right.
fascinating, Clay. The more I talk to folks about their careers, the more I realize that, oh, like this isn't a thing that people generally talk about, right?
Mm.
Especially if you're dissatisfied.
Right.
If you think about times in your own career when you've been dissatisfied, like unless you're fortunate enough to have a relationship with a coach or a therapist, you feel like you're burdening the people around you by always talking about this thing that's really letting you down. So
Mm.
you just don't talk about it a bunch. And
Right.
when we found that we started to talk to folks about their careers, they really opened up. They started talking about all the ways in which they weren't getting what they wanted out of their careers. They started to talk about how they ended up at a particular point that they did. Sorry, I'm a little bit of a sound in the background.
It's all
Uh,
good.
and by and large, most of the people who we met with and most of the people who we spoke to uh, weren't following a sense of and purpose. And forget the purpose part for a second. Like very few of them were satisfied, right?
Hmm.
Very few of them were ecstatic or happy about their careers. There
Hmm.
were a handful that were, and which gave us reason to believe that it is possible, right?
Yeah.
But people who were like we found to be really tremendous when we were in college together or friends from high school who were doing amazing things then, they seem to be settling,
Hmm.
right? They seem to be settling in their professional life. And we believe that it was possible to have both, right? To be both ambitious and to be driven by purpose and to want to continue to learn and grow and find a company where you can do that and find a place where you can be your authentic self and do that as well.
Well, Cam, I know that there are a lot of listeners and viewers right now are saying this sounds virtually impossible. This is not
Yeah.
something that I've experienced. It's not something that my, friend or college roommates have experienced. How
Yeah.
does one get to the point where they can identify for themselves, first of all, that they are not fulfilled, they're not satisfied, and the step then to take in the right direction to support themselves in finding work that speaks to what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, the easiest way, but not the most economical way, is to find a really good coach. Like we're really fortunate at Bleeker, especially for our employees. We make one-on-one thinking partners. That's how we
Mm.
describe our coaches. We make them available to all of our teammates. Coaching is terrific, but it's not available for everyone. That's the thing that
Right.
we're working on. But in the absence of a coach, like what we recommend people focus on is in clarity, right? So
Hmm.
getting really clear around what's most important to you.
Hmm.
That's a thing that we don't do often enough. And I wish that was a thing that I was encouraged to do when I was in university or college. But like I was encouraged more to determine what I was good at, right?
Wow.
Like, hey, like consider what
Wow.
you're good at and how you can convert what you're good at into work. I spent far less time or any time at all thinking, hey, what kind of impact do you want to have? What kind of leader do you want to be? In what way do you want to influence movements or people or communities? Like questions that really open up your mind to like the type of work that you want to do, or even what work do you enjoy, right?
Hmm.
Not everybody has the luxury of taking on work that they enjoy or that fulfills them or that moves them. But the only way to even have that optionality is to first consider, what do I enjoy? Right?
Hmm.
What's going to make me feel fulfilled at the end of the day?
Right.
So I would suggest that if you're able to, like, start considering that, and you'll be surprised about how open other people are to having that conversation with you.
Hmm.
Right? Like what I found and what Jay found when we first started at Bleeker is that people love talking about their careers, right?
Right.
Even if they're not so happy in their job, because they don't often have an opportunity have to talk about what they're doing and how they're doing it.
Hmm.
They'll welcome the opportunity to chat with you about it. So I would start with there, like really building a sense of clarity, right?
Yeah.
And there's some there's some frameworks that I can talk about that might be helpful. Like if
Yeah.
you don't know
Right.
where to start, should I
Mhm.
do that, Clay? Yeah. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So, here's an exercise, and this it sounds simple, but it can be really, really useful. Start by considering what's most important to you, right? So, if family is really important to you, put that on your list. If earning enough money to pay down your student debt is really important to you, put that on your list. Like after you've kind of put down a list of 6 to 7 things that are really, really important to you, weight them. Right. So say, okay, paying down my student debt, that's the most important thing to me. I'm going to make that a 10 out of 10.
Hmm.
Uh, like a job that gives me work-life balance. That's important, but not as important as my student debt because that's on my mind. It's weighing me down. I'm going to say that's a 7 out of 10. Right. So once you do that, you have a really clear sense. Okay, here are the things that are important to me, and here is the order of importance. What that allows you to do is when you're considering opportunities, right? When you get to a point where you have real, you have clarity around what's most important to you, you can compare opportunities against that clarity, right? You can
Yeah.
compare opportunities and you can start to think, okay, with this particular opportunity that's available to me, what's the likelihood that it will allow me to pay down my debt? What's the
Hmm.
likelihood that I'll be able to maintain work-life balance with this specific job? Like in the absence of finding clarity about the things that are most important to you, you're more likely to be led towards like more visible, easy to quantify elements of job opportunities, like the salary or the job description or the location of where the job is or the name of the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
These things could be important to you, but you won't know for sure unless you've taken some time to really interrogate what is important. So that's just like a clarity phase that you can take on your own. And it's helpful if you can do that with a coach. But if you don't have a coach, if you don't have the benefit of working with a coach, then that's something you can do on your own as well.
Yeah, and this podcast, the listeners and viewers, they absolutely appreciate the hands-on coachable lessons that they can take and actually apply to their lives today. And so, for a lot of people, Cam, who have been doing some of these more quantifiable examples and
Uh-huh.
processes, they feel that they're a little bit lost when it comes to their intuition guiding them towards some of the best opportunities. What would you say for
Mm-hmm.
those kind of folks who are more so, yeah, I know 1 + 1 is 2. I can definitely, quantify my way through a lot of things,
Yep.
but I'm not necessarily guided. I don't know how to tap into knowing what's the next right best step for myself.
Yeah, I would say a muscle that you'd be helpful, or that would be helpful to lean on, is the one of curiosity, right?
Hmm.
Where one of the things that I encourage folks to do when they're in this transformation phase, right, or when they're approaching where they don't really have clarity and they're trying to figure out what I want to do next, is just to start talking to people about it, right?
Right.
Sometimes it takes a little bit of humility. Sometimes it takes a dropping of the ego, especially if
That
you've
part.
accomplished some stuff in your career, right? So,
Mm.
like, the more accomplished you are in your career, sometimes the more difficult it can be to kind of drop your guard and make it clear, like, I don't know what I should do next. But that's the only way that you're going to start to explore all the different opportunities available to you. Like, as you start telling folks, like, you know what, I'm not quite sure what I want to do next. Like, here's what I like to do. Here's how I like to do it. Like, what do you think? Right?
Right.
Like, the
Yeah.
more of those conversations you can have, the more, and maybe even sometimes just the process of talking about it is helpful, right? So for some people, talking about it like starts generating ideas in their own mind. If you have a friend or a significant other who you can start talking about it with, like, start there. But really, as many people as you can talk to, they don't need to be experts. They don't need to be luminaries. They don't need to be mentors. They just need to be good listeners, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, anybody who's a good listener, like, bore them with your story, right?
Yeah.
But they won't be bored.
Right, right. There's so many people that I coach or just in conversations in general, and they're like, I have nobody to talk to. I'm like, what about your cousin right there, your friend right
Yeah,
there, the
yeah,
person
yeah,
who's living in your house, your neighbor? People are interested in what it is that
100%,
you are doing and the things that
100%.
matter to you. If you just,
Yeah,
like you're saying, release that ego, drop that sense
yeah,
of security and ask for help, ask for the support
yeah.
that you need. And so,
That's right.
Cam,
That's right.
yeah, and so I'm sure people are very curious to know after PepsiCo, talk
Uh,
to us a little bit about the formation of Bleeker. What did you know for sure at the very beginning of what it was that you wanted to create?
yeah. So I did know a bunch, right? So, like, one thing I did know is that, and this became clear between my founder and I. So my
Mm,
founder, Jason, like, we went to high school together, went to college together. He's white, I'm black. Like, one thing that we learned was, like, oh, like, my career path has been very different from his. Mine has been much more difficult than his is, and we had
mm,
almost the identical education,
yeah.
right? Same educational path. Like, why has it been more difficult for me than it is for him?
Hmm,
Right. So we knew that. It's like, oh, and that's obvious, right? But we wanted to know exactly what it was. Like, if
mm,
we were going to build a system that made it easier for someone like me, right, a Black American, to get in the driver's seat of my career, what
right.
was missing?
Mm,
Um, one of the things we realized is that, like, oh, I don't really have the same access that he does to this informal network of advisors, right? Where there were people in my life who really cared for me, right?
mhm,
And who had advice to offer. But the depth and the breadth, especially from a business perspective, and maybe even also from a financial perspective, they were incomparable, right? I didn't have the depth or the breadth that he had, right?
right.
And those things mattered. right? Those things
Yes.
really do matter. So we thought, okay, if there is a way that we could surround people like me with resources like advice and mentorship that I didn't have to pay for, that
Mm.
is a way to make the playing field more level, right?
Wow.
Not a program, but an always like an evergreen, always available resource of like, oh, I can tap this person for advice, I can tap this person for advice, and they're filling my blind spots.
Yes.
Right. So that's the thing we understood from an individual perspective.
Mm.
From an organizational perspective, like we didn't really know where the people were inside of those companies who were going to be true allies to us, right?
Mm.
Who are the people inside of organizations that were willing to do things differently,
Right.
right? One of the things that I talk to my co-founder Jay about often is that like the system works just fine for him.
Hmm.
Like he doesn't need the system to change in order for him to advance. For some people who are already benefiting from a system that they haven't created, it can be difficult to willingly participate in the transformation of that system
Right.
because there is uncertainty like, well, will it work as well for me in the future?
Yes.
Right? That could be understandable. It's like, hey, like why should I change a system that works just well for me,
Hmm.
even if the downside might be it doesn't work as well? That's what we needed to find. I didn't know how
Mm.
many people like that there were out there inside of
Mhm.
big companies. But over time, we found a bunch. Like we found a bunch of incredible allies inside of big companies who really did want to do the work of transforming their cultures so that they are more diverse, they're more equitable, more inclusive, more belonging, more collaborative. And it took us a while to figure out how to identify those folks and how to build solutions that could help them and in turn help BIPOC professionals. But that's the work that we did over. I just fast forwarded through about 5 years of Bleeker, by the way, Clay.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And Cam, I know a lot of people are probably wondering what is that secret sauce that you and Jay developed in finding those allies? Because I talked to people of color who have had similar schooling that you and I have had and similar
Yeah,
career paths, and they're just saying, allies, they're not really,
yeah,
for me. How did you all figure out who those people were and who are really sincere about those efforts?
yeah. I think part of it was becoming more trusting. Like,
Mm.
Jay'd probably be okay with my show. Oh, I'll just make this about me, and you can. Uh, I didn't have a lot of trust, right?
Okay.
So when I started, I went away to a boarding school, and I remember one of the pieces of advice that my dad gave me. I'll give you a shorthand. It was like basically trust no one, right? Like you're on your own, trust no one. And I really held that inside of me for too long. And
Hmm.
as I looked for solutions in this particular challenge, I really thought, and my co-founder did as well, we could do this without companies. We're going to find incredible BIPOC talent. We're going to surround them with resources, and we're going to bang down the doors and bang down the walls of companies, whether they like it or not.
Hmm.
That was a lot easier for us because it didn't really require us to extend trust with more
Wow.
people that we didn't understand. Right? We were
Right.
building a community in the way that we wanted to. We were identifying people who align really closely with our vision and our mission. And we didn't trust that organizations would help us.
Hmm.
We didn't extend trust, so we certainly didn't get it.
Hmm.
It was only after we started extending trust and started talking to leaders inside of companies and giving them the benefit of the doubt at first, especially ones that were really willing and able to lean in. Then we started to really move the needles. Um, that's not to say that there aren't leaders and companies that didn't deserve the trust that we offered them,
Right.
right? But by and large, there have been more of those leaders who deserve the trust. And once we built this mutual bridge of trust, we've been able to develop fantastic relationships inside of those companies that ultimately are benefiting Black and Brown talent.
Yeah. And for a lot of people, Cam, you really just hit the nail right on the head in terms of that trusting muscle. How do you
Yeah,
open yourself up to the possibility that you're letting someone in, your vulnerability is going to be rejected like it always has been. That's the motor that's playing in the back of a lot of people's head, or the possibility that this could work out for my favor. How did that work for you personally?
Yeah, it was difficult, Clay. As a founder, or the particular type of founder I am, I'm not as concerned with the impression that I have on others,
Mm,
right? That's helped me do things or take things from 0 to 1, where others might be concerned about how they're looking, like when they're at a place of zero, like
right.
there's not a lot of money in your bank account, like you don't have a lot of clients, but you're waking up every day. You know this as a founder, right? You're
Yeah.
committed. You're going to build this thing, whether people think that you're crazy or not. So I wasn't necessarily worried about like what impression I would have. I was mostly worried about probably just being hurt,
Hmm.
right? Um, the thing that we're trying to build um, is so I believe it's so important, and it's personal, right? Like there have been moments in my career where like I haven't gotten what I deserved, and it hurts, especially the way in which it can happen. Like a little bit of an example, like if during an interview you get a sense, or I'll make this about me. Like I have been in interviews when I get a sense that, oh, I'm not being taken seriously.
Hmm.
Like it's not advertised. There aren't any specific words being used, right? Like there's nothing like nothing indefensible about it. But I
Hmm.
just have a sense that,
Yeah.
oh, like this is a missed opportunity for me. Like I'm not being given an opportunity here, and that's crushing.
Right.
Right? That's because it's a for me, it's hard to forget those moments. There's
Yeah.
nothing you can point at specifically that said, "Oh, this person harmed me."
Right.
It's that unknown, and for me, the most disconcerting thing about that unknown is like there are probably so many more of them. Right?
Right.
What are those other opportunities that I never had a chance to capitalize on? Right? Like all those little perceived slights, imperceived slights, like built up this kind of exoskeleton. And that for me was the most difficult thing to remove.
Right.
Right, this almost this armor.
Yeah.
Right.
And even for me, I sort of teleport and telegraph that into a lot of my conversations in the past of going in and wanting a certain outcome, and I feel it
Yeah.
internally, but because of that armor, what I thought I was projecting out and what I was saying clearly and having clarity in was
Uh-huh.
not being perceived for the other person who was hearing me say that, because
Yeah.
of all of the defense mechanisms. And it, like you're saying, for me personally too, it took a lot of work and a lot of
Yeah.
support and counseling to get over that and to move past
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I'm still trying to get over it. I don't know if you can tell from uh, my body language, but it's still not easy for me to build
Right.
trust in that way.
Yeah.
Right.
And maybe just to have a little bit more specificity with the word, not get over it, but to heal yourself through it,
Heal.
heal
That's right.
myself through it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And
right.
yeah, Cam, thank you so much for sharing that. I know people who are listening and viewing this just received a word of acknowledgement there. It's always nice to just have somebody say, you're not alone in this
Yeah.
process as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. And so now that Bleeker has been
Hmm.
going and
Yeah.
thriving, and I say all
Yeah.
the time, I've met a lot of incredible people as a result of Cam and Jay, as a result of this relationship and that relationship. And
Hmm.
so in my own personal career, I have felt seen like I've never been feeling seen before.
Yeah.
When the great resignation, or so the
Yeah.
terminology of it being
Yeah. Yeah.
coined, just hit
Yeah.
the airwaves, anybody that I knew, especially people of color, I said, y'all better get hip to Bleeker.
I love
You
it.
all better find Bleeker.
I
What
love
has
it.
that been like for your organization? Have you been finding a lot of people who have just been in this rut even before the Great Resignation, and it just happened to just spill over? Or what has been your experience with the people that you are working with now?
We have been, maybe just by function of our work, we've been meeting with people who are dissatisfied with their careers for the last 9 years, right?
Mm.
So that doesn't feel any different. There
Mm.
has been a steady drumbeat of, hey, like I don't like what I'm doing now. I want to do something differently. That hasn't changed. What has changed is the response, right? So
Ah.
whereas 8 years ago, leaders were more likely to say, well, maybe it was just a bad fit,
Mm.
or like maybe they just were ready to make a change, right? Now it feels more like, well, like what are we doing to contribute to this person leaving, right?
Mm.
There seems to be, from a leadership perspective, more accountability and more responsibility. This
Mm.
could be just a function of our talking to the right leaders now, and maybe those leaders are always asking those questions,
Mhm.
right? When a good person leaves, their first response isn't, well, like there must have been a reason. Their response is like, well, what can we do differently next time? And that's
Nice.
what we're hearing a lot. That's what we're hearing a lot of now.
Mhm.
And we're also hearing a lot of our clients and our partners putting that type of intention not just towards white collar workers but blue collar workers, which is
Mhm.
terrific, right?
Mm.
So thinking about, okay, like in what way can we create an incredible work experience for all of our employees, right? So I guess if anything has changed, it's this intention around accountability,
Mhm.
right? And like, in what way can we ensure that we're creating really good places to work for everybody?
Yeah. And just in terms of all the programs that you
Yeah,
offer, like I
yeah,
know that
yeah.
we've hit on a couple, but walk us
Sure,
through really the foundation of it.
sure. So our mission is to put underrepresented talent in drivers through their career. Our goal, why we're doing this, is to normalize top to bottom representation of historically marginalized talent, right? So that it is normal to walk into a boardroom and for it to feel diverse, not just feel diverse, for it to be diverse,
To
right?
be.
Yeah, it's normal to walk into a C-suite meeting and for it to be diverse. In order for that to happen, like organizations need to interrogate and evolve the way they hire, well, the way they interview, the way they hire, how they uh, how they advance folks, and how they
Mhm.
retain folks. Like that's where we partner with organizations. We do that through a combination of coaching and recruiting.
Mhm.
But it all starts with our understanding, or rather, our helping our partners understand where they are culturally, right? So every client we work with, we start with, let us understand where you are from a cultural perspective, right?
Wow.
Let us
Yeah.
understand where you are now. Let us understand where you want to go. If what you want most from us is introductions to Black and Brown talent, we will let you know if you're ready for that yet, right?
I
Right?
want to shout amen.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
you're look go ahead.
it's in their best interest, right? So
It is.
if if what you want is a thriving organization that is diverse, inclusive, and equitable, you need to start on the equitable and inclusive and belonging part first.
Right.
If not, you've got a leaky bucket, and no matter how much water we pour in, you're just going to keep calling us for water. Like, we're trying to
Mm.
help you, right? And that's especially true for us because we're referring our talent. We're referring people who trust us.
Right.
We're referring people who we want to have meaningful careers. We don't want to send them to an organization that isn't ready for them. And we encourage organizations, you don't want to get these folks until
Right.
you're ready because they will leave.
Yeah. And Cam, before you continue, just one
Yeah.
question for you. Can you talk, in your opinion, can you speak about belonging, mattering, and questions of dignity without having conversations of race in the workplace?
I don't think so. Like, I haven't seen it accomplished. One area of belonging that's really important, it seems to be like a theme of this conversation, is a matter of trust,
Yes.
right? Like, to what degree are you building trust with everyone in the organization,
Hmm.
right? To what degree do the people who are the most junior in the organization
Mhm.
trust those who are the most senior?
Yes.
And what are the ways that you, as a senior executive in the company, are extending and building trust with everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that's a core key indicator of belonging, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of inclusion. Obviously, there are many more,
Of
and
course.
like we've been digging into our own organizational culture at Bleeker, digging in not just to belonging but also trust, into seen microaggressions, right? Ensuring that everyone in the organization feels like they belong, right? Feels like there's
Yes.
trust, feels like they're
Uh-huh.
part of a team. Not
Mm-hmm.
just a pocket of them, not just leadership, but everybody, right?
Everybody. Yeah.
It's really hard work, but that's the work that's required if you're going to build an organization that's equitable and inclusive and diverse.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you and Jay and your team, you're supporting your introductions, like you said before, with feeling, okay, these people have been vetted, and
Yes,
you can go in with the ability of being able to show up in your full self, as
that's
your
right.
whole self, as you see it, not
Yeah,
as an organization tries to reflect that back to you.
that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we have the partnerships. Continue to share more about what your organization does.
Yeah. So, like, a thing that I'd be remiss not to mention is the community. All right. So, you're a member of
Oof.
the community. We mentioned the
Yeah.
community a couple of times. Like, we want to support individuals who are looking for ways to learn and grow and build meaningful careers. Through our programming and through our platform, we center BIPOC talent, but we
Hmm.
welcome everybody. Right? So, like, the everybody we welcome are people who are curious, people who are generous, people who live and operate with integrity, and people who have a growth mindset. Like,
Yeah.
with that lens, our community is fantastic, right? So I think there are 17, 1,800 members now. It's a free community, so we don't charge for access to the community. Uh, it's for that reason that we have been slow to the digital adoption, right? So it's
Okay.
only recently that we started to roll out some digital platforms that allow us to better support our members. You may have noticed that now we have a place where members can go to register for upcoming events. That's a big win for us.
Yeah.
There's also a place where members can go to lead their own self discovery. And we've got this incredible tool, or two incredible tools. One that allows members to identify their mind patterns, right? One
Hmm.
that helps you identify your thinking talents. Thinking talents are the ways in which you're energized, right? What gives you energy and what burns you out, and how those things, depending on which quadrants they fall into, the innovative
Hmm.
quadrant, the relational quadrant, the analytical quadrant, or the procedural quadrant, how you might best connect with others who
Yeah.
have similar thinking talents or different thinking talents. I mean, this is an incredible body of work that we give to our members. Members can also identify their mind patterns, like how they best communicate with one another.
Hmm.
Whether you are most stimulated to focusing through visuals, through movement, or through sound, like what triggers your concentration, what triggers your sorting, what triggers your imagination. These are incredibly powerful tools with reporting capabilities that we make available to our members at no cost. It's important for us that members receive these resources at no cost. Remember, as I mentioned earlier, like, there are some folks who have the benefit of resources like this, and we want resources like this to be available to our members, especially members who couldn't otherwise afford them, especially early in their career. It's important that it's free to them. The other component of the other reason why it's important that we provide this membership as a gift is that we want to support members for their entire careers, right? During the
Right.
ups, the downs, during the earlies, during the lates. And you and I both know there are points in our careers when we can't pay for things, right?
Yes.
I've had points in my careers I really could not pay for things,
Right.
right?
Right.
And like, what kind of career service will we be if there are times when the people who we're trying to most desperately support can't pay for the stuff we offer? There are
Right.
really good services out there
Of
that
course.
are paid, and they have grants, and they do what they can to support those who they're looking to support. But it's important to us that our membership comes at no cost. We also connect members with one another for advice. We organize forums where members can come together to hear guest speakers for either inspiration or for practical advice. We will again bring members together in person. Right, that's something
Yeah.
we used to do a lot of in New
Yep.
York. It was actually just last year in Q1 we had great events in LA, in San Francisco. We had a bunch in New York, and we'll bring those back again to build community and to surprise people with who they connect with. Right, like get
Yeah.
people out of their literal industry bubbles so that they can learn with others. So those are some of the dimensions of the community that I'm really really proud of supporting. And if anybody is listening or watching and they are interested in learning more about Bleeker, you can email me directly, cam@bleeker.co. That's BLEEKER.co. And I can point you in the right direction depending on what kind of support or advice you're looking for.
Cam, listen, so you have clearly shut down the interview. You have given us a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of inspiration, a wealth of just resources. And what I can say, somebody who is a go-getter, the resources that Bleeker has afforded me with different relationships that I have had throughout my time well before Bleeker, I have not been able to find the exact same level of access. And then also as well, non-transactional relationships, like people genuinely, they want to know how they can support you. You want to know how you can support Jay. I mean, like
Yeah,
everybody that you meet, they have that sense of generosity. And
yeah.
I love from my theology days, I believe in a theology of generosity. And that's exactly what the organization has.
It's a really special group, and
Yeah.
like I would be I'd be derelict in my duty if I didn't mention the team. That we're a growing team now that's doing all this incredible work to continue to build out the community, to continue to support our partners, from the other principals in the company, Angie, Dave, and Brian, to the woman who's helping to lead this community, Sarah.
Yeah,
We have
Sarah.
an incredible collection of folks inside the organization who are driving us forward and helping us better support more companies, more partners, helping us better support more talent. And we wouldn't be where we are without them. So I'm really grateful for the support of the team.
All right, so listen, folks, you have heard this really great conversation with Cam. And Cam, before I let you go, I know you dropped your email, but
Yeah.
I know people are interested in learning more about the organization as well as figuring out ways in which they can become a member. So where can we learn more about Bleeker and you?
You can go right to bleeker.co, www.bleeker.co to find more about the organization. To find more about me, find me on LinkedIn, or really just send me an email, and I can guide you to the right information, or we can find some time to chat, depending on my availability. But yeah, those are the best ways to learn more about me and Bleeker.
Cam, thank you so much for your time. You've become a brother from another mother and literally a wealth of support. And I so appreciate you speaking to our community here.
It's been my pleasure. And hopefully, if we can do this again next time, we can do it in person.
Yeah, definitely. All right, folks. So you can learn more about Cam by visiting the show notes. Of course, you can learn more about me by visiting clayswilliams.com. And I'm on all your favorite social media by the handle of @PlanA with Clay. That's @PlanA with Clay. Remember, folks, Clay is with a K. Thanks for listening. Look forward to seeing you in our very next episode of Plan A Conversations. Peace, folks.